With us today is Chris Cornyn, Chief Innovation Officer at Revolution Foods, Thea Runyan, Co-founder and Head of Content and Coaching at Kerbo Health, and Ben Mann, Senior VP of Marketing and Innovation at Plum Organics. So we're going to start off with a few questions for all of our panelists. The first being, what has been the biggest challenge, but what has also been the biggest benefit of accomplishing your mission through business?
So for those of you who don't know Revolution Foods, absolutely. We basically serve about 200 fresh, healthy meals to school children each year. That's about 1.5 million meals every week in 30 cities. When you're doing that, scaling that kind of business is a monumental, I was going to say pain in the ass, but it's a monumental feat to be able to build culinary centers, get clean supply chain, cook the meals, get them to schools every single day. When you look at all of the other people who have been doing this, which is just basically creating meals, freezing them, and having crappy food for kids, you're not only changing just the way big food works, but the way that kids eat. And I would say that's the other challenge, is that with our meals and the way that we create foods, we need to change habits. And that is a really difficult thing to do with an 8th grader who's been working on a diet of Doritos and Kit Kats each day in the lunchroom. So I would say all of those things, huge challenge. And then the last is that we have to provide these meals for about $1, because that's what the government reimburses schools for meals. So it's a very complex way of changing the world and getting good food into kids. But we've done it and started a conversation, I think, with a lot of other food companies now that are changing the way that they're doing business in the sector.
So Kerbo, for those of you who don't know, we're an online mobile weight management program for kids and teens and families. We licensed our program from Stanford University. So we've been around now for 3 years. First year was spent building kind of the company, and the last 2 years we've been full launch. But the challenge for us is definitely scale. Just like you, I think that's a challenge with any company. But our first challenge when we started Kerbo was taking an offline program and bringing it into this online environment. We did that quite successfully. The next challenge is really working with these companies and organizations that we're working with. We're working with large insurance groups, employee health plans, and the decision-making process takes a very long time. So we've learned a lot in that respect as well, to kind of take a step back and rethink our business model a little bit, and just understand that it takes time to build these relationships. But the benefit is that it's working. We've made great strides, and I'll be able to tell you more about it as we continue on. But the benefit is that we've been able to reach already thousands and thousands of kids and have just been a company for 2 years. So.
Okay, so for Plum Organics, our challenge is kind of similar in the sense of how do we, as we scale and we get bigger, how do we bring even more scale to our impact? And if you think about our beginnings, we started by a few parents who, as they walked the grocery aisles and they were thinking about foods for their little ones, they were very uninspired. And they felt that there weren't great choices for busy working parents to get nutritious, organic snacks, foods for their little ones. And so that was the start of Plum. And I think a key milestone for us, for those who may or may not know, is about 2.5 years ago, we were purchased by Campbell Soup Company. And that sounds like a very scary, bad thing, I know from the outside, but we saw it as a real opportunity. The first thing, what's important to us for our mission is, for us, it's all about nourishing little ones from the very first bite with the very best food possible. And so what we did, what we took that moment to do was we actually reincorporated as a public benefit corp. So we are the first wholly owned subsidiary that is a public benefit corp. And written into our bylaws is about helping all little ones, including those who are food insecure, with nutrition and organic foods for them. So that is part of our core DNA, and that is, I think, that first milestone for us. As we gain scale and you get bigger, I think one of the things that's really important that not a lot of people talk about is you have to continue to bring in employees who are just as passionate about that original mission and that continued mission as the folks that are there. And so that we spend a lot of time on making sure that when we hire people that they're just as passionate and they're looking for different solutions as well. A couple other things, I'd say two other things. One is we're actually going through a process right now to see how we can actually have more impact. We do a lot of great things, and I think the thing that we've done the best is in our donation of foods, but we think that there's more that can be done from a policy standpoint, from an education standpoint, and so we're looking at ways to kind of even change our mission and advance our mission a little bit more. So more to come on that hopefully in the next couple months. And then finally, this is the kind of exciting part, is when you're purchased by a very big CPG firm, you have the chance to change them from the inside. And so this is an organization that's actually trying to radically change the way they develop food, the way they serve their consumers. And so we've definitely had a strong impact on a big organization. So we're still small. We reach 2 to 3% of households in America right now just through our products. This is a company that reaches 30, 40% of households. And so even small changes that they make have a profound impact.
Great, thank you. Next up, how has your company made strides in bringing healthy foods, and for Thea, health resources, to communities and families with less access?
Well, I can start with that. 80% of all of the kids who eat our meals qualify for either free lunch or reduced price lunch. That's just the nature of the program. And it was a shame for decades upon decades that all those kids were being fed really crappy food. So our impact, just by the nature of the business that we are in and what our mission is, we've been able to, I think, really change the food lives and the food behaviors of a lot of American kids who otherwise would not have had the opportunity to have those shifts in just fueling their bodies with good ingredients and foods that actually can help them succeed and grow into lifelong healthy eaters.
The reason we started Curva was all about access. It was to increase access for families who didn't have the ability to go to an offline program in a clinical situation. We really wanted to be able to bring the resources, the tools, the support that they needed to anybody across the country. We know millions and millions of kids are struggling with their weight, millions of families are struggling with these issues, so our complete mission was access. How do we increase access to these resources? So we're using technology to do that. As a digital health company, we're really lucky we're able to be very innovative. We are grounded in a program that we know works. We're using and leveraging our technology to increase that access. And everybody has a smartphone. That's the first question that we got when we started this. We said, what about the low-income families? Everybody has a smartphone. And so that's what we're leveraging.
So for Plum Organics, we started a program called The Full Effect. And what that is it's a program designed to get organic foods and snacks to little ones, as well as nutritional education to little ones in need across America. And I think what's important to understand is, 1 in 5 kids are food insecure. So many of those kids actually get enough calories, but if you look at the calories, they're not getting nutrient-dense calories. And I think it's interesting, we have a pediatric advisor, Dr. Alan Green, who has quoted a couple times, and this is one that always stands out for me. If you were to put an ingredient label on little ones across America, so you see the top 30 or 40 ingredients of what they eat, the first vegetable that you will see on that ingredient label is a potato in the form of a French fry. And the first fruit you will see is an apple in the form of apple juice. So those are very telling stats. And that is, when you think about the challenges we face, for us, we think it starts in the very beginning. So for us, the full effect is really those first 1,000 days. That's where we're really focused. So that's starting in utero in those first couple of years. And so that has really been our focus over the last several years. We've donated over 10 million organic foods to little ones, and so that's a big milestone. And then we partner with organizations like Convoy of Hope and the Homeless Prenatal Program and Conscious Alliance to help get our products across America to little ones in need.
Nice, thank you. Are there paradigms about how we talk about obesity that don't resonate with your company or that don't resonate with your consumers?
I'll start this time. Actually, it's a good segue from what I was just talking about. For us, it starts in the beginning. So often, and I think I've heard several people talking about, it's hard to change somebody's palate if they're used to Doritos and Kit Kats. And it is actually proven, like in utero, that baby has more taste buds than he or she will ever have in their life. So when moms say, ooh, they didn't really like what I just ate, so they're kicking or whatever, it is true that they actually taste it. And so that is an important point to remember. So for us, both in your utero as well as in the first couple of years are really important to really develop that palate. To expose little ones to all different types of fruits and vegetables and grains and a wide variety of foods. That is what we call nutritional intelligence, so developing that palate. And what we find, and if you look at the evidence, we believe that it leads to better outcomes long term, both from a health and weight standpoint, cognitive, all sorts of issues. So, food is really important. So often parents and even doctors, when they're looking at milestones, they're looking at fine motor, gross motor, all those different things, but not food. Food is not one of those milestone things that they look at, and that's actually different than the way we look at it. We think nutritional intelligence is absolutely paramount. So one would say, what I always say, and I encourage our team, and it's part of our philosophy, is in a perfect utopian world, we would need no packaged goods. Everybody would be eating whole fruits and vegetables, and we really encourage our parents to do that whenever they possibly can. The reality, though, is many of us can't always have whole foods for every single meal or snack occasion. And so for us, our job is to make sure that we have the very best food that we possibly can for those occasions.
So this is such a great question. It's very complex. So I've worked in childhood obesity for 15 years, so I've been there. I've also been a director of a school wellness program for 3 years before starting Turbo. So the paradigm that I see that's really different in this kind of for-profit model is again, it's very complex. So coming from a clinical setting, you're talking to kids a lot about BMI percentile. You're really focused on kind of the metrics and the outcomes from that perspective. We obviously are worried about those and concerned about those as well, but what we're finding is when we are talking to the direct consumer about weight or weight loss or weight management, even if that's what they are looking for, they don't want to talk about it in that framework. So it's been a really interesting marketing challenge for us, where parents are looking for us and Googling Curvo because they're looking for weight loss solutions. They've been told by their doctor they need to manage their weight. There's some trigger that's causing them to search for us. But when they get to our site, they do not want to see anything about weight loss, weight management, diet. We're not a diet, we're a behavior modification program. But so that's been a really interesting shift. Interesting for me with a public health background to kind of see how you have to really change the position, change the conversation for the different audiences that you're talking to. Everybody in this room, we all have the same common language. Everything that we talk about, I've been coming to this conference for 4 years, we have the same conversation, we use the same metrics, but when you get out to the direct consumer, it's a very different conversation. And it really, even if their goal is weight management for their kids, they want to talk about healthy eating, healthy living, healthy environments. So it's been fascinating. It's a huge marketing challenge, as you can imagine, but I think we're finally figuring it out. So just something for you guys to even keep in mind too when you're working with families, like thinking about maybe changing the conversation, shifting it a little bit, because you all know of the denial that exists, right? So when you start launching right into the weight issues, that sense of denial with the parents we were talking about on the panel earlier, it's huge. If you shift the conversation to something else that's somewhat related, kind of call it a code word. Maybe your child wants to be a better athlete. Maybe they want to just generally feel better. Maybe they have some different goal that's somehow related to weight, and if you approach it from that perspective, we find it to be very effective.
So at Revolution Foods, we don't talk about obesity. It is not a word that we talk about, frankly. Our goal is when we go into a cafeteria or a lunchroom and we look in the trash can, our goal is to make sure that what you see there are not wrappers from Doritos and Gatorade, whatever, Lunchables, because that's how we can affect obesity and sort of redefine it. Having more kids come into schools, eat our meals, and not bring those other things in will, in a sense, really get rid of the word obesity. So all we're really trying to do is not bring up the word or even create meals that are going to address this word or this epidemic, but just change behavior. So when we go to a trash can at the end of a lunch hour, we're seeing an absence of the things that are really at the root of the problem.
Laura, can I add something to that? So when I was the director for a wellness program in the school district, we were looking at organizations like Revolution Foods and things like that. And you really, even if a school is, if their mission, if their wellness policy, if they're really trying to work on health for kids and specifically weight, you cannot talk about weight at school. You cannot talk about childhood obesity. You will get completely stonewalled. So a company like Rev Foods is really commended for coming in kind of stealth. But that's really what it is. You're changing it. You're changing the whole environment. You cannot go into a school district and talk about childhood obesity. You will get completely stonewalled, even if they have a very, very high rate.
And related, this is a question for Thea. How do Kerbo coaches talk with kids to motivate them to reach their weight and health goals with a positive mindset?
So let me explain a little bit about the program first so you can understand the coaches. So we are a 3-month program. There's an app that is actually free. You can all download it. But really the heart of the program is our coaching. We have health coaching for kids. And kids talk to the coach once a week over FaceTime or Skype. So it's completely technology-based. Again, going back to that access issue, it's all about, talking to somebody around the world, honestly. We've got 100 coaches here in the US. We've got 10 coaches in Singapore. We're really starting to look internationally. But our coaches are our behavior modification coaches. They come from a variety of different backgrounds. We have professional athletes, we have some dietitians, we have health educators. But really, first and foremost, they have the ability to connect with kids. Doesn't even matter what your background is. If you can't connect with kids, you're not going to be able to affect change. So we look at that first and kind of look at what their health and wellness background is, and it's all positive. So all these messages are resonating, and the panel talking about how the communication that goes on in your programs and so forth. We come from a completely positive mindset. It's all about non-judgment. It's about meeting the child where they are. What are the changes we can make? We know that we would love to say no packaged foods, but our families that we work with on Medicaid, that's not an option. So what do we do with those families? So coaches are extensively trained in behavior modification and coaching techniques on how to really figure out what is the issue that's going on in that family. And it's a customized solution, and we're able to use technology to be able to give that information back. So our health coaches, when they talk to the child on the phone, or the teen on the phone, or the parent on the phone, or Skype, or whatever, the coach is actually looking at a screen on the back end that sees all the data that the child entered into the app. So all the exercise, all the food that they've tracked, we use red, yellow, green light foods. Coach can see all of that. So they can offer positive reinforcement, positive suggestions, because it has to be a positive experience. We want the child to talk to the coach every week. It's very positive.
That didn't come across. Yeah, no, it did. Chris, this is a question for you, back to what you want to see when you look in the trash can, actually. So being invested in both student health but also avoiding waste, how do you ensure that students will enjoy the healthier meals that Revolution Food provides while, before putting recipes into production and actually serving it?
Sure. So we have a great privilege. We can walk into any of the schools that we serve and test our products. So we are rapid prototyping new meals, new suppers, new breakfasts, and bringing them to students and having them taste our meals. And we kill a lot of them because they just don't have kid delight. On top of that, we just ask them really simple questions. We want to know, what does your mom make at home that you wish could be served at school? And it's amazing the kind of answers we get. Or is there one food that we don't serve that you'd like to see? So those are, very simple things, but we see it as a real privilege to be able to put our innovation in front of kids and get immediate feedback, then go back to our culinary centers, retweet things, and go back out to them. And then we'll ask them, what should we name this meal? We're really trying to involve them, so it's really hard to get into the mindset of a third grader of what they want and how they want the food to be presented and how it should be named. So we're in their world. And that doesn't mean we don't have flops, and that doesn't mean that some things don't end up in the trash can, but we also do this all over the country, because what you'll find at San Francisco Unified, wild success will totally flop in Texas, and we've had that happen a lot. And then the last thing, it all goes back to the trash can. We watch our trash cans and see what happens. I was going through meals, and there was just all this bread in the trash can, and I kept on looking and wondering why, and it was, we have to get a certain grain for nutrition purposes in a meal, but the way that we were dealing with this lavage was just really cumbersome, and kids hated it. So what we do is we go back and say, okay, we tested it, but it's still ending up in the trash can. How do we re-engineer that meal so that sort of thing doesn't happen? So it's a very fluid process. There's no easy answer. There isn't any silver bullet. And kids' taste change. Taco Bell will come out with whatever it is, the Supalupa Lapa, and we then have to say, okay, how can we maybe make our meals a little bit like that, deliver something that they're going to love, but also deliver great nutrition.
Great, thank you. Ben, for Plum, palate training is an important part of raising kids who love healthy food. How has Plum found a balance between introducing kids to fruits and vegetables while responding to the heightened awareness around sugar in kids' diets?
Yeah, so as I spoke earlier, it is the cornerstone of our food philosophy is certainly getting little ones exposed to a wide variety of fruits and vegetables and whole foods. From a product development standpoint, so most of our products, I'd say the bulk of our business is in those pouches. So we're probably most famous for those pouches. And I think what's interesting to think about is how we develop products at Plum versus almost any other place I've worked at, any other food organization. And what we start with is what we're trying to develop. And in the case of, let's say, it's a pouch or a bar or whatever it may be, we really spend time thinking about what are the nutritional deficiencies of the child at that age, right? Whether it be a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 1-year-old. What are the things that they actually need? What are the fruits and vegetables, or the profile of the product? And we spend all our time trying to pack in as much as we possibly can, and then making sure it tastes good, because it is actually an important thing, especially as they get as kids age. They start developing a strong point of view of what they like and don't like, and so you have to keep that into consideration, because if they don't like it, they won't eat it, and parents won't buy it. So our job is always this one of pushing the frontier. It's a journey. We're all on a journey. If you develop the absolute perfect products that's nutritionally perfect, you're going to have a small audience of folks who will eat it. So what you're always doing is trying to push the boundaries of making sure that it tastes good, but it's packing in every single nutrient that you possibly can, especially for that age group. When we develop those products, we definitely, so there's what goes in and the presence of positives, but when we do that, we also are looking at what are some of the other attributes of it? So what are the levels of sugar, sodium, whatever it may be? We always aim to not add any sugar, so the sugar comes from the fruits themselves, or the lactose from the dairy, or whatever it may be. That's not to say all products, because sometimes it's just not possible. And that goes back to that journey part of constantly challenging ourselves to do better. And so that's honestly, from a product standpoint, we are constantly renovating our products, trying to make them better and better, both from a nutrient standpoint, but then also finding sometimes there are new ways to make a product, and new recipes that allow us to even reduce sugar even further, or reduce sodium, or whatever it may be. But in all cases, we actively minimize any additions of those.
Great. And piggybacking off that, how have infants responded to your savory flavors, like the second blends and some of the pure vegetable squeeze packs?
Actually, quite well. I would say, so, in the world of baby, there's a convention of stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 that's usually, as the child gets older and older. I will tell you right now, those conventions are actually kind of not the most useful. We kind of use them because we're not ready to reinvent it yet, but parents can start with stage 2 instead of stage 1. It's just old conventions that I think Gerber set up many, many years ago. But what I would say is having many different types of vegetables has been very powerful. So they've been extremely powerful. And then we have some products that are just purely vegetables. And so what has been important for those, and where we found the most success, is not just doing just the straight vegetables, which we do as well, but actually coming up with these like a nice like a culinary recipe, including herbs and spices in there. And oftentimes mimicking things that parents are serving that they eat themselves, whether it be, we have a line of products called World Baby or a Hearty Veg line, but making sure that we're using some culinary, great food-forward recipes that inspire these young, healthy eaters at this age.
Great, thank you. For Chris, in what areas do you feel like Revolution Foods has been able to push the envelope most in school lunch?
We started to change the conversation. I mean, you had a couple maverick food service directors who were doing an amazing job, but usually you just had Sodexo and Aramark pulling up the truck and dumping off the food. And Chris and Kira, our co-founders, came out of business school 10 years ago and just said, screw it, we're going to try to change this. And here we are 10 years later, 200 million meals later, and it's not perfect. We're not in every school, but now every school is addressing food in schools, which is very different than calling it school food. And I think that's a big transformation, and I hope it continues, that we don't see the food that is being served in schools as some other thing. It just happens to be food that's served in schools versus school food, which it has, this awful connotation of being nasty and something you should avoid, and it's not for me, and it's uncool. So that was the reason I joined the company. It's because a lot of work has been done, and there's a lot more to be done, and we're just going to keep on trying to clean up supply chain, delight kids, and get great food into their bodies.
Great, thank you. And Thea, what has been the biggest motivation of insurance companies and employers for covering Kerbo Health for families?
It's a little bit different for each. Insurance companies, definitely, there's an ROI. They're worried about the costs and so forth as well. What are the costs associated with childhood obesity? But also what's really interesting is these insurance companies are looking for something that's new and innovative. That's something different they can add to their platform. It's becoming competitive out there, so they actually want something that they can market that's kind of cool and different and that people like. And we can scale. So we're a scalable opportunity for them that they can do at a price point that they can afford. So those are kind of the different things that the insurance companies like about us. The employers, a little bit different actually. So employers, They are more looking at it, they're looking at us as an opportunity to offer something to families, because we really are, at the end of the day, a family-based program. We're talking about the importance of parents and so forth. You know, you do need that family engagement for success and for long-term sustainability. So they're really offering it as something good that they can do for their employees. And so these are big, large companies that employ their own people and want to be able to do something good for the families. There is, of course, you can kind of unravel it and look at all the other benefits. If your child is healthy, there's increased productivity, your parents are at work more, but the ROI is pretty hard to prove with them. So they have told us that what they want to do is they really just want to add it to their offerings, because that's kind of the right thing to do.
Great. And just one last question for all of our panelists before we move to questions from the audience is, in what areas do all of your businesses want to improve over the next year?
I'll start. We have a real challenge, and it's tough. It's called menu fatigue, and those of you who work in our industry know this. There's no human that goes to the same restaurant and gets breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day and is satisfied with that. It would be ludicrous to think. And so that is what a challenge that we really have, is being able to serve a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner for a lot of our students 5 days a week, and not at a certain point the kids reject the food. I mean, we would all reject food from one place if we had to eat it every single day. So part of the innovation team is how do we either change the way we present it, how we menu things, so we can get over that hurdle, because that's the only way you're going to get healthy food into kids. There's a certain point where they get to fatigue. So that's one thing. And the other thing that we're working on, which I haven't really mentioned, is taking some of the products that lower income families depend upon in the grocery store and figuring out how to reinvent them. So right now we're working on what does it mean to have Hamburger Helper 2.0. Most of the families who have kids in schools are not going to be ordering Blue Apron. I mean, let's be real. But is there a way to create that same kind of experience, speed scratch, so we can continue to get food, good healthy food, into families when they are at home? Or let's take Cup of Noodles, which is a styrofoam box full of dehydrated, sodium-laden yuck, but it's 29 cents, and kids friggin' love it. So how do we figure out a way to deliver a fresh noodle experience at a cost-effective way, and start to change those other behaviors beyond what's happening in school? Huge sort of issue, but that's another thing I hope we will get a chance to tackle and be successful at.
I'll be quick. For us, it's Medicaid. We're really trying to work with Medicaid. So we've got a lot of different things. We've got a lot of international interest, which is super exciting. But we, just really quickly, we have 3 main channels of distribution. We have a direct-to-consumer. We're also working through insurance companies, employers, which you've figured out by now. But what we hear time and again from our providers is that most of their patients that they're seeing are Medicaid. So we're really teaming up with a lot of those providers, and that's one of our big agenda items for this coming year.
And for us, if we start, my philosophy is the garden in my backyard and then making something in the kitchen is the gold standard, right? So if that's the gold standard, then thinking about our existing products and innovation and how do we get closer and closer to that. So, we're spending a lot of time looking at how do we get fresher, better ingredients? How do we then process them differently that is safe, but yet retains more of the color, the texture, the taste, and the nutrients that were in there? And then how do you package it in a more effective way? So that is our inspiration for not only our core, but then innovation. So thinking about how do you use different temperature states, how do you use different technologies, things like that, to deliver even fresher, better food for little ones. And then the final thing is just transparency in food. So how do we do all that and have even deliver to the consumer in an easy way to digest, transparency all the way back in our supply chain.
Great. Thank you. So we have a few minutes for questions.
Hi, my name is Yoko. I have a question for Chris, Revolution Food. I know your national program nowadays, but you started out in Oakland, and my question is, what is your approach for, especially the Bay Area, culturally diverse community? What is your approach on that?
So we test our meals regionally because we understand that a school in San Francisco, where we just launched, sweet garlic chicken noodle, is probably going to be pretty successful, and so we tailor our meals regionally, but that meal will flop in other regions. So when we go into Texas, and they're just used to carnival food, literally, it's sort of how do we create meals that will be accepted, but then also start to change the palate. So the fried Twinkie isn't the lunch of choice for those kids. And so it takes a lot of work, and we look at all cultures and taste buds and histories and food lives and food struggles and try to address them accordingly. But it's not easy.
My question is for Chris. You serve mostly on the public schools in the city, all public schools. And my patients all go to public schools, and half of them don't like the food. The food is really healthy, you've done a good job, but it's not very palatable. So how can you make it more tasty for children?
It's an ongoing struggle because there are nutritional guidelines set by the government on sodium and all the sort of cheats in the food world that make food delicious that we're all used to. And so we're always, in the food world you call it hedonics, which is just the whole nature of the meals, always trying to enhance the meals. I mean, most of all of our, we don't do very much private school because they can have their own chefs, and most of all of our business is in charter schools with kids who are on free reduced lunch program. Part of it goes beyond the food. There's just a stigma about school food. And it's this really difficult needle to thread between cost, nutrition, and kid love. And nobody's nailed it. We haven't nailed it, but we're going to continue to try to do it because there are a lot of students who don't like the food. And some of the reason is because their parents said school food is really crappy, and they remember it even being worse than it is now. So we're having to combat what kids are hearing in family from their parents, their brothers, and so on and so forth. So I wish I could just say we have the magic bullet on how to make every single item delicious. That's our aspiration and our goal every single day. But it's a process to change not only the mental perception, but the taste buds.
And I'll build on that because it actually starts, for a baby, it's easier because you only need to try it typically 8 to 10 times on something before that little one will start to eat it and enjoy it. As that kid ages, it's 50, 60, 90, 100 times. So to change the behavior. So a bit of it is perseverance on trying it and just keep trying it and keep trying it because it takes time, but it can change, but it's hard. It really is hard. Yeah.
So the Berkeley School District serves healthy organic food that children actually like. I know because I worked in the kitchen.
Any last questions?
I think I heard you. Have we gotten any pushback? Well, it's funny. We go out to bid and we competitively pitch businesses with big food companies. And we're at a real disadvantage because you'll have some of the competition are vertically integrated in meats. And they're taking just their crappy commodity meats and they are offering it to schools at a really reduced price. So what we're finding is big food companies are coming in and undercutting us, and it's really difficult to make the business economics work because we have crafted a supply chain, clean label supply chain, from everything from our breakfast cereals and quesadillas all the way up to we have a hot dog, a 5-ingredient hot dog. So where we're challenged by big food is when they're coming in for a contract and they can totally undercut us, and the schools benefit from cheaper lunch because they can pocket that money. So it's really just sort of an economic challenge that we're up against every day.
One of my favorite programs is Master Chef Junior, where 8-year-olds compete with 14-year-olds, and it is so interesting. I mean, I don't always cook from scratch, but my thinking is that you have a kid who, let's say at the school, you can have something basic, and then the kids will add to it, like they have to chop their vegetables or just throw it in a huge pot, whatever they can put in, and that is a message that they're involved with the whole cooking process. And you could be as creative as you want. So you have the 29-cent noodle, add things to it. Put vegetables. I mean, I use a lot of oatmeal, so constantly put oatmeal in my soup. So creative things that people can throw in. And so maybe the school can think about that. I don't know, just an idea.
It's a great idea. You want a job? No, just kidding. It's a great idea. We bring kids into our culinary center and have them actually see our chefs cutting vegetables and making the food, because often at home they don't see that, and we have a very extensive education program where we're sending our chefs out to schools. But again, it's a long, hard road to fight. But the fact that food culture is on TV everywhere is really helpful, and to your point, because now a chef can be viewed like a rock star, and I think kids are seeing that a food life and just being involved with food is cool. So thank you.
Great, thank you all so much.